Recording's in progress. Are we, should we make a start perhaps? Okay, sounds like the recording's in progress. Well, thanks everybody for joining today's virtual event, an online event out for regional Australia. My name is Peter Randiria. I am a proud resident of country Victoria, and I work for the Wolf Blass Wine Company here in Melbourne. So I just wanted to start the meeting just with an acknowledgement of country. So this event is being held on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners of those lands. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here with us today. So thank you. So we're really excited about this session. It's a really interesting topic to be talking about, the importance of development, advancement, mentorship amongst regional communities. And we've got hopefully we'll have a really interesting conversation today with three panelists who have a very, very diverse perspective about mentoring in regional areas, and we're really excited and lucky to have them here. So the way this is going to work is we'll hear a little bit from each of our three panelists, hear a bit about their story about in terms of growing up as a member of the LGBTQI community in regional areas. And then we've got a few questions to help us sort of dig a little bit deeper into development, mentoring. Ultimately, our sort of aim is to help people learn a little bit about the importance of and value of mentoring in regional areas. So why don't we get started? Because there's a heap. I'm sure we could be talking for a long time. So let's get into it. But let me just give you a little bit of context for those of you who've never heard of Out for Australia. I can explain a little bit about them, and then also the partnership that Out for Australia is starting to establish with Wolf Blass. So Out for Australia is the country's largest and most successful mentoring program that connects people in the LGBTQIA+ community and their allies. The mission of Out for Australia is to provide really sort of positive, visible mentors, role models, thought leaders to those to the community through targeted support. And the premise of this is an insight that says that LGBTQIA+ people tend to have less opportunities to advance and develop professionally than people in the broader community. And so mentoring becomes a really valuable tool with allies and people within the community to help them progress through the career ladder and in whatever form their career takes. So really this is about offering targeted support to professionals, no matter what stage of their career they may be in. So it's got a sort of really broad remit, and that's what's really exciting. And whether you want to share your experiences to help others as a mentor, or if you're looking for somebody who's been there and had an experience to guide you on your journey, Out for Australia really does provide you with opportunities, access, connections to other members of the community and allied people in really meaningful, rich ways. Mentoring is a really, really powerful tool in many regards, but it's often something that many of us don't really know a lot about. And I think that's going to be a topic that we can dig into a bit today. Out for Australia has over 1,200 participants in their mentoring program across Australia. It's hosted through this incredible online platform called Mentor Loop. Sometimes the mentoring takes place virtually, sometimes it takes place physically. It's what happens to work for the mentor and the mentee. But regardless, it's 100% free. It's open to anyone who's over 18, who's here in Australia, and it's quick and really easy to sign up. And we'll talk a little bit about how that all works right at the end, if we've given you a bit of a taste of the platform and what Out for Australia is all about. Just while we're talking about Out for Australia, I also want to just explain why we here at Wolf Blass have started to get involved in partnering with OFA. Our founder was a man called Wolfgang Glass. He came to Australia in 1966. He was an immigrant who really chose to challenge the stuffy, exclusive rules of wine, and said that he really wanted to sort of challenge conventions in winemaking, asking why not a lot of the time. Why can't wine be drinkable now? Why can't it, high quality, be accessible to lots of people? And he felt that inclusion, therefore, was right at the heart of his whole DNA when he set up the brand and his business almost 50 years ago. So because there are really so many areas of life that continue to exclude and people forced to settle for less, we here at Wolf Blass will celebrate those who want to break conventions that limit people, because we believe that overall, everybody shouldn't, we can't settle until everybody has the chance to soar broadly. So that's a really exciting sort of opportunity for us as a brand and a business to get involved with the community and with organizations like OFA. So we're thrilled to be part of it. So let's talk about today's session and the three panelists who've joined me today. We've got three people with very diverse experiences within the community, and the first person I'd love to introduce you to is Nick Steep. I hope I've said that right. Steep. So Nick grew up in regional New South Wales and lives in Junee in New South Wales now. He came to terms with his sexuality at a very young age and faced the difficulty of family, peer, and societal rejection, which many of us have felt. And that took a significant toll on his mental health. Whilst studying as a Bachelor of Social Work pathways course through TAFE and then Charles Sturt University in Dubbo, he secured a job with Headspace in Dubbo and contributed significantly to the conversation around mental health, marriage equality, inclusion, and it was about the sort of the inclusion of the community across the central west of New South Wales. After completing his postgraduate certificate at Charles Sturt University at the start of 2018, he became an advisor for equity, diversity, and inclusion at Charles Sturt. He is a committed and passionate member of the community and an inclusion and a member and a supporter of regional inclusion and diversity. He was named Young Professional of the Year in Out for Australia's Role Model Awards in 2018, as well as a role model at the Australian Workplace Equality Index in 2019. Well done, Nick. So at the end of 2019, he completed his Master of Social Work and he received a distinction. Again, well done, Nick. We'll come on to you in a moment. My next panelist, who I'm delighted to introduce you to, is Mckeelie Armstrong. So Mckeelie's 25 years old. She's grew up in Mackay, Queensland, studied through Central Queensland University, and her campus was literally in the middle of the cane fields. How cool is that? She successfully completed a Bachelor of Paramedic Science with distinctions, and she's employed with Queensland Ambulance Service as an advanced care paramedic too, and we owe her a debt of gratitude for that. As an adult, she's lived in Bowen, a rural coastal town, and now she works at Dysart, a rural mining town, 3 hours west of Mackay. She's on her days off. She does FIFO back to Brisbane, where she lives with her fiance. Welcome, Mckeelie. Thank you so much for joining us. And then finally, Matthew Withers is with us. He's got a really interesting story in the context of wine, and Matt and I work together in the wine industry. So born and raised in Rutherglen in northeast Victoria, Matthew is a descendant of one of Australia's pioneering wine families, the Lindemans family. Growing up in Rutherglen, Matthew worked in numerous wineries, restaurants, and celladors before spending time in Ballarat and Perth to study. And after working as an actor in Sydney, he departed the stage for the wine industry, beginning a career in professional wine sales. Matthew's worked at Foster's and Langton's before settling in Melbourne to manage a super premium wine retailer in Southbank for many years. He was then employed as a key account manager for Domain Wine Shippers and was promoted to national brand manager for Champagne Billicart Salmon. I do hope I've said that right, Matthew. Matthew then became the national sales manager for the brands of Joval Family Wines. Did I say that right? Joval. Managing the sales of 3 distribution businesses across ANZ. And in a curious twist of fate, in 2021, he was brought home to his ancestral roots and now proudly represents Penfolds as national account manager with the esteemed portfolio of Treasury Wine Estates, who are themselves the modern day custodians of the Lindemans brand. So what an amazing story of the circle of life.
Circle of wine life.
So Matthew, Mckeelie, and Nick, thank you so much for joining us. So we'll start this. I'd just love to hear from each of you just about your experiences of growing up. Like, we'll come on to mentoring in a moment, but I'd love to hear your experiences of growing up as a member of the LGBTQI community in regional areas. What was that experience like, and what were some of the things that you remember about those experiences, good and perhaps not so good? Nick, do you want to start?
I was going to throw it over to Matt as the elder.
We discussed that we were not going to reference age, but sure, I'll start. Why not? What do I remember? I remember trauma that does come up, but I'm at peace with that now, I think. Yeah, I mean, it was very tough growing up. I grew up in a little town. Rutherglen had about 3,000 people. And I went to a public school, which was about, nowhere near as big as these city schools are. I was also part of a family. So we were on the land. We had a farm. My parents were also Olympic rowers, so they were very sporty, and I'm not sporty. So I was up against it from all angles. I was pretty okay with my flamboyance as a kid, I think. I remember I was like, it's just so cute to be playing on this hedge. And I was referenced as being a girl, I think, was my first sort of torment at school. And then I remember the first time I was called gay. I had no idea what it meant. I was in grade 3. I remember Mrs. Gallagher was my teacher, and some boy said gay, and I just was like, what's gay? Sounds fun. And then it did really become quite difficult. The bullying was relentless. It was a really rough primary school time. I really struggled with it. I had a bit of a breakdown when I was in year 5, and my parents took me out of that school. And actually the best thing they did was put me into a small school. So the small school had 30 kids in it, and it was kinder all the way to grade 6. So I was in one class with about 12 kids from 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that was the perfect opportunity for me to get back on track because it was small, it was nurturing. There was one teacher that you had with you for the whole duration, and it kind of built me up to then enter high school. So that was really hard. High school, I don't know, I'm sure I just felt like I went straight back to the bottom again. It was just like, of all the confidence I've just developed, I've lost it all again because I am the tiny fish in this huge, big, scary pond. And that was tough again because I had to find my identity in a big group that I'd already questioned, and it was slightly different because I think my character was kind of formed and nurtured slightly through that time at primary school with a really wonderful teacher, and I'll come back to teachers as when we discuss mentors. That's when I came out to my best friend as gay, which was really huge. I remember, gosh, it was one of the biggest days of my entire life. But also really empowering as well. And then I really started to understand what I needed from the people that I surrounded myself by or with, which was people that believed that I was okay just the way that I was. Can't say that the childhood growing up was an easy one at all. Very, very few opportunities to meet other young gay queer people. The internet, I mean, I was on ICQ and MSN. I don't know if anyone would know what those things are, but it was the modern day kind of Instagram, or the olden days Instagram, I suppose. And I did use that, and I've always used online platforms as a way of finding my friends and finding allies and finding mentors. It's always been something I've done. I was online dating before Grindr was even a thought in the back of a van. So complicated, but I'll come back to it later. There are some really great things about growing up in the country that I hold on to, I'm sure.
Thanks, Matt. And I was going to say, if some of the sort of topics that the panel are talking about sort of prompt some questions, I've allowed some time at a little bit later for a Q&A. So please just drop if you've got some questions, feel free to drop a question into the chat, and would love to sort of get to it a little bit later. But thanks, Matt, for sharing your story. Mckeelie, what about you? Tell me a little bit about growing up in regional Queensland, and that must have been an experience.
So even though I'm the youngest here, I didn't exactly have the most positive growing up either. I always found school quite isolating, and I also grew up in a very Catholic religious family. So you kind of get a little bit brainwashed, I guess, and you believe that there's something wrong with you. So I've lived most of my life believing that, and then once I did get some good people around me, I became confident in who I am and, yeah, could be myself. I suppose growing up in a regional community, it is quite narrow-minded. People can be very judgmental. You question yourself a lot. And I suppose like heterosexual people, like a lot of my mates, growing up with like hormones and thinking the world's against you, like the usual kind of things. I think when you're part of the LGBT plus community, you have all of that, but plus a whole heap of stuff on top of it, which I don't think people have been well educated about still. I think it has become a lot better, but there's definitely a lot more room for growth. Primary school was even pretty terrible. Like I remember year 6 having a crush on one of the hockey goalkeepers, and she came up to me one day and said, "We can't be friends because my mum said you're a lesbian." So yeah, that's one of my earliest memories. But yeah, like a lot of trauma as well, like getting spat on, getting your head flushed in the toilet, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah.
How old are you, Mckeelie, when those
started around year 7.
Wow.
Yeah, so I suppose you do develop a kind of resilience though in yourself when you do go through these kind of things. You learn to back yourself and have confidence in who you are. So yeah, that's mostly my experience, just growing up in a very Catholic family, not having as many opportunities. Like Mackay was a lot smaller when I was growing up. And yeah, career-wise, it's a lot about who you know, like what not about what you know, I found. Yeah.
Growing up, did you know many sort of lesbian or gay people in around you? Did you meet anyone?
No, not at all. Ironically, like 5 of my closest mates from high school all came out as gay, but we came out as adults because we weren't comfortable and we didn't feel safe. So even when I went to school about 10 years ago, it wasn't safe to come out then. The first person to come out as gay was a guy, I think 2 or 3 years younger than me. So yeah, very brave of him. But yeah, none of us came out and it was all very hush-hush.
Well, thank you, Mckeelie, for sharing your story. It sounds like it was an experience. Nick, passing over to you then. Tell me a little bit about your experience in sort of far west New South Wales.
Yeah, so probably similar to Matt and Mckeelie, it wasn't the best time. I was born in Coonabarabran and lived in Coolah up until I was 10. Some people don't know where those places are, but definitely look it up if you're unsure of those. And then I moved to Dubbo when I was 10 and kind of lived there until 2018, so most of my kind of teenage years. I'm one of 6 siblings and predominantly raised by a single parent, so there wasn't too much exposure to the LGBTIQA plus community. I didn't kind of know anyone, and it wasn't I guess being gay and wasn't seen as a positive thing. It was quite a negative rhetoric. I denied it for quite a number of years. It wasn't until year 11 or 12 that I did come out, and that was only through the support of a teacher at my local high school. It was public as well. Not ragging on public schools, but just based on my experience. And I guess I wanted to leave Dubbo as soon as I finished year 12. I was the first in my family to finish year 12. So it was kind of like, all right, get that certificate and go to the big city. That's where Mardi Gras is. That's where Oxford Street is. That's where I know I will find acceptance, because I didn't at that point in time kind of feel accepted within Dubbo or the surrounding areas. I didn't really have the means to move to Sydney. So I enrolled in a Bachelor of Social Work, as you kind of outlined. And it was through that experience that I started to realise that there definitely is support in regional areas. It's just a little bit harder to uncover. And you kind of need to look hard for it, and maybe even create that sense of community yourself, or be part of that kind of shift in creating inclusion and community. Now I live in Junee, which is about a population of 3,000 near Wagga Wagga, and I have no desire whatsoever to move to a capital city. I think there's something really beautiful and unique about living in regional Australia, but definitely growing up, I didn't feel that. Peer support was quite lacking, family support was quite lacking, but similar to Mckeelie and Matt, you kind of do develop a sense of resilience and obviously overcome that to kind of be very out and proud as I am now.
That's great. And the same question that I asked sort of Mckeelie, did you sort of know in your communities, did you know anyone that was gay? Did you know that they were gay, but they hadn't told anybody else?
Probably early high school, so year 9, year 10, other kids did come out, but I saw the amount of ridicule and kind of bullying that they faced, and that kind of scared me even more so. One of the stories I do tell around my family support is I was in, I think it was year 9 or 10, and I had hooked up with a guy in Dubbo, and my older brother found out about it, and he came home kind of really angry and staunch, and he was like, oh, this guy's talking bad things about you, I'm going to go and bash him. And I was like, well, you can't go and bash him. It did happen. And he kind of stood over me and was like, are you gay or what? And at that point in time, for me, it was safe first to come out as bisexual. And he said, oh, well, if you turn full gay, I'll put you in hospital. And so, all these experiences kind of did drive me back in the closet and did have a massive impact on my mental health. I did self-harm for quite a number of years to kind of cope with what I was experiencing. But like I said, through the teacher and kind of feeling okay within my skin, I did overcome that. I will say, though, that my brother has kind of learnt, and he is one of my biggest supporters now. His beautiful children, know me and my partner as Uncle Nick and Uncle John. And to see that shift is really, beautiful to see. But, at that point in time, it was quite scary, particularly with all the hormones of a teenager. And then, not having that support at school either.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds a challenge, particularly from inside your family unit. So let's now sort of like shift the lens from sort of your growing up experiences, as we've been talking about, to sort of your sort of career and development, sort of your professional development. And what were the challenges when you were sort of thinking about embarking on the journey of your career in starting in your sort of regional community? What were the sort of challenges you faced when you thought about, well, where do I want to go in life? What do I want to do with myself? How do I sort of get there, and what do I sort of need to accomplish? Tell me a little bit about kind of that. So, Mckeelie, tell me a little bit about kind of where you started to think about your sort of professional development journey.
So I guess I started university a few years out of high school. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure how to even apply to a university. because of all my experiences growing up, I didn't exactly feel academically driven or didn't believe in myself that I could become someone or something. So yeah, I started right at the bottom, applying for uni, going through all my studies. I was lucky to get a scholarship with Pinnacle Foundation, where I was provided a mentor, and that, yeah, it made the world for me, like someone to guide me, be a sounding board and help me through all those challenges, because it was quite new to me. And also, having grown up in a smaller town, I wasn't surrounded by very good mentors or role models, people that understood who I was. So that was, yeah, that kind of support is very helpful. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to add, sorry.
No. Tell me about what's the Pinnacle Foundation? I've never heard of it.
So the Pinnacle Foundation is an Australian organisation. It helps with financially for students, for youth. I believe the age group is it 17 or 18 to 24. Nick will be able to clarify that. But yeah, you're right, Nick.
Yeah, 17 to 26.
26. Okay. Yeah, so they help financially, so I could, study, focus on becoming that person that I want to be.
That's great.
I'm wearing the uniform now. But yeah, they help with that. They also provided a mentor, which is such an invaluable experience when you haven't grown up with that kind of mentoring and guidance in your life. So yeah.
And what did was the mentor in your sort of chosen sort of field? Were they a paramedic or a sort of a medical professional, or was it just a sort of, yeah, they were.
So they do their best to match you with someone who's working in the profession that you're working towards. So I was matched up with another ACP too. So yeah, she has walked a very similar path to me in her life. So yeah, out of everyone, she was a very good match for me.
Is she still, are you still kind of mentoring together, or have you?
Not so much
on?
Mentoring anymore. I suppose it's turned into more of a friendship.
Yeah.
We still keep in contact. She's down in Brisbane now. So part of our mentoring was distance, because she was based up in Townsville and then she's moved away. So even the mentoring was at a distance, but yeah, we've maintained connections, and yeah.
And thank you, Mckeelie. So Matt, when you were sort of growing up, you were telling me earlier that sort of Mckeelie was sort of sounds like she has the benefit of a pretty sort of structured kind of foundation behind her, and a mentor that was very clear in their sort of role in her development. Tell me about where you turned to for support and guidance in your world in terms of navigating your journey.
I think it's probably worth also noting that I've sort of changed careers. So while I was young, I sort of was really wanting to evacuate the thought of being in wine, get away from going into sport, and I thought I'd become a performer because I'm incredibly talented in that area. So I found myself drawn to the people that believed in my ability, regardless of how I didn't want people to love me or hate me for my gayness. And I felt really safe in the performing sphere there. So that's why I think I loved it so much. I was a singer, dancer, actor, and it was all of my teachers, really. It was, I remember connecting so deeply with the principal of the high school that I went to, the Scott School, Albury, Mrs. Todd. She was the principal's wife, and she would direct every musical, and she became like this just ally advocate. You know, if I'd see her walking through the schoolyard, she'd just sort of like look at me, but she'd always give me just great encouragement, great tips. And I think I was hunting for that. I was hunting for a mentor. I didn't even know what a mentor was. And I still think I'm slightly confused as to what they are, and are we, who are we and what are we doing? But I was always on the hunt for mentors, because I felt isolated on so many different fronts growing up in the country. So teachers, I also found, I joked about it before, but ICQ, MSN Messenger, MIRC, if anyone remembers that. I used all of those online platforms as well to try to find people that I could talk to that might accept me. And I made one of my longest term friends, who at the time was definitely a mentor. His name's Ty Frost, and he's one of the presenters now on Smooth FM. And he used to have a radio show called B104.9. And he ran this little internet like tech show on the radio. And he'd invite guests, and I was like, wow, all of his guests sound just like me. And and he got me on the radio to talk about computers. And then we just became friends, and my family absolutely couldn't understand what on earth I was doing with this older, clearly quite camp man. I was like, he's my friend. He understands me. And he told me that he was the one that said, just hold on, it'll get better. And it'll get better is the catchphrase of, every sort of gay man's life, or I don't know. It's something that we all kind of share. So yeah, I didn't have any formal mentors, but I think I absolutely sought out as many informal mentors as I could. My grandmother, I would consider a mentor, and I would confide in them and seek, guidance from them. And without them there, I do not think that I would be anywhere near have the confidence, regardless of my sexuality and how I identify in that sphere. They were really, really important. Yeah, I couldn't have done it without them. So I'm glad that someone inside my head said, find them.
And Nick, in your experience, what are the sort of the things that dare I say it, sort of formalized mentoring relationship in the style that I know that you've experienced in your past and continue to experience, and Mckeelie has sort of described, versus the more, ad hoc experiences that Matt's described? What are the sort of the hallmarks of the two that you've seen?
I think they both play such a significant part. Like for me, in kind of professional development and shaping who I am kind of personally and professionally, for me, it wasn't until, so I left year 12 and then went straight into university. And it was through the teacher that I mentioned previously that kind of encouraged me to look at social work as a degree. And a few weeks into the first year, I was like, hell yes, this is for me. Like I can make a difference based on my kind of experiences and help kind of young LGBTIQA plus individuals. And that was really great. And throughout that kind of degree, I did have, I think, formal and informal mentors, but I guess the piece that was missing was they were allies to the community as opposed to being part of the community. And it wasn't until my last year of my Bachelor of Social Work that I was actually kind of matched and had a very formal mentorship with someone who was queer, was working in the kind of social work, health promotion, sexual health kind of space, that I really understood why that piece was missing. And it was that shared commonality of experience of kind of your sexual orientation and how that comes into the professional space. For me, that mentor was 2.5 hours away in Bathurst. So we were definitely doing Zoom before it was cool. And, we would catch up when we could if we were, traveling through it on my way to Sydney, or if they had come down to Dubbo. So, yeah, I think they both play a part. With, I think, formal, there is, I guess, parameters, monthly meetings or topics to talk about. And, I guess it's a bit guided, whereas informal is just those, I guess, irregular catch-ups and conversations that you do have. But I think they both play such an important role, and you can't kind of prioritize one over the other.
Presumably, maybe that's unfair, Mckeelie. Presumably, you've also sort of experienced your formal mentorship and sort of perhaps less formal kind of sort of ad hoc mentors. Would that be fair? And do you see the same things, that sort of you get benefits from both types of relationships?
Yeah, definitely. Informal mentorship is definitely just as important. through those friend networking, people that you've grown up with, certain family members that accept you and you connect with. I think building as many people as you can to have your support network is really important. Even if they're not part of the LGBT plus community, it's still important to have these people around you who just love you for who you are and want the best for you. Yeah.
Have any of you been mentors yourselves? No.
Not formally.
No, but tell me informally.
Well, maybe I actually think that maybe informally I potentially have been. I think, yeah, I probably am without having had that discussion. But I know that there are people that probably look at my confidence now. Actually, I have a pretty confident Instagram account, which is not the one that people at work would know. And it kind of has my comedy piece, and I'm really quite myself. And through lockdown, I had some people. I made it quite a thing, and I was trying to sort of reach out to numerous people, and I had people contact me, and we became. I felt like I was having online pen pals. Pen pals. I had a pen pal actually. That was maybe a mentor. She was in Japan. Yeah, I feel like I may just by virtue of people's my perception of my confidence and my perceived success, even though I felt like I was crumbling, there was a nice kind of commonality. That's a nice and a confluence between me identifying very openly as gay and being very very proud of it, and people kind of looking to that like, how can you be like that and be gay? Like, well, we start here. So maybe informally, but I'd love to take that accountability up a notch and actually step into the role as a formal mentor. I would love to.
Well, let's sign you up at the end of this call, Matt. So it sounds like there's one sort of significant sort of difference between the informal mentorship that we all sort of experience and the pen pals, the sort of and the slightly more sort of structured stuff that Nick and you, Mckeelie, have sort of experienced, which is that particularly in the professional space, there's, Nick, you talked about, you found a person who, well, number one, first was you had a mentor first who was in the social workspace. So there was somebody to model and learn from and hear from you, who sort of, and Mckeelie, you had somebody who's walked your shoes and sort of knew the positives and negatives of going into sort of the medical or sort of professional sort of sphere, and then to find a sort of a professional who's in your sort of line of work and is also either an ally or even in the community seems to be a sort of a really interesting sort of, that's a huge becomes a huge plus to be able to sort of, you're learning kind of skills, you're hearing about experiences, you're learning about kind of sort of challenges that they've experienced in the past that this person that you can learn from. But the difference is that now you're hearing it from somebody within the community who can share a level of empathy with you that many others don't. It sounds like that's a real sort of opportunity to learn and grow. Mckeelie, if you when you look at some of the resources that are you working mentoring now or getting a mentorship through OFA or it's still through your Pinnacle Foundation relationship?
So currently I don't receive any mentoring. That finished last year for me.
Right.
I suppose I haven't personally done any formal mentoring myself for anyone else, but I feel like in my job at the moment, because I'm openly a lesbian within the community, I don't hide that part of myself. And I feel like that's my way of mentoring people. So obviously I work with all age groups, babies to the elderly. And I suppose one job in particular stands out for me when there was a teenager having an asthma attack. It was also very anxiety induced. Once I built that rapport, this person was transgender, and I could tell they were still very uncomfortable in themselves, who they were. And I know that being in the medical kind of environment, going to hospitals, that can be very uncomfortable for them. So I built that rapport, asked them what their pronouns are, and just open that doorway for them, was an advocate for them at the hospital to get them what they needed. So I hope I gave that kid some kind of hope, and, but I'd love to do mentoring one day. And I think the more the resources become available to people in these smaller towns, children and youth like this, once they get that, they're going to thrive. They want nothing more than people that will support them for being who they are. So I think it's fantastic that you guys are doing this. And yeah, so many more opportunities are coming up for these children.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Nick, if you actually, this is probably for you, Matt. Like, if you knew today about the kinds of resources and access that Out for Australia could offer, do you think your development experience would be different? Would you have pivoted less, perhaps? Would you have sort of advanced more? Not that you're in a brilliant role in a big organization on an amazing brand, so where you are now is great. But would your journey have changed somewhat, do you think? I mean, who knows? But it's an interesting question to speculate on.
Is that to me?
Yeah, to you. Yeah.
That's a great question, because I have a second career, but I think I was actually thinking about the moment that I decided to move back into sales and back into wine, in particular in the different, like working with distribution. I was very fearful of being accepted, and this was in 2010, being accepted as a gay man entering an industry which was pretty predominantly, hetero-mass. I was fearful of it. And I think that had I had someone, even if I think about my current role, I met with someone who's in the current business who identifies as an ally. And we met a couple of times, and I felt more comfortable to come into this business, knowing its size and its breadth and its history. So I think that I think I'm going around and around, but it definitely made an impact for me coming into this particular business, because when I was ready to enter the area initially, I was terrified. I was terrified that all of the stigma would come back. I was terrified that I'd be vilified, and yeah, I probably didn't achieve and succeed and excel as quickly, because look at where I am now, as I could have if I'd had that sort of that support and that backing. Yeah. I think it's just knowing that you just having someone to back you and that you can talk to, and that maybe has trod those creaky boards before you.
That's a brilliant observation. Nick, do you think you work now with mentoring a lot, and you're sort of closely involved in that through OFA? Has COVID changed how mentorship and support is delivered in regional rural areas? Has it made it, geography history now?
I think it's definitely made it more accessible for regional and rural people. I think there were always hesitations around kind of online meetings because people would prefer face-to-face, and there is nothing like kind of in-person contact. But I think there has been a real shift in the use of technology due to COVID. And the more, similar to what Mckeelie was saying, the more that we promote OFA and the wonderful opportunities that can benefit the LGBTIQA plus community and does benefit the LGBTIQA plus community, then that access there is kind of increased. So yeah, I think it has been a real shift, and I think the numbers in terms of regional rural mentors, the more events like this that we do, the more that we promote what OFA does through Mentor Loop and kind of other events, the numbers of regional rural kind of participants within the Mentor Loop program is just going to increase. And I'm really excited for that because, like you said at the start, regional rural individuals who are LGBTIQA plus don't necessarily have the same access to community, to mentors in their kind of chosen profession that also identify as LGBTIQA+. And, you know, my history is testament to that, in terms of it wasn't until my 4th year of university that I did actually find someone that was the same sexuality as me in the same field. And I really wish that I did have that in year 1, because university is scary. None of my family had ever gone to university, and it just would have been good to talk to someone as a queer person, you know, involved in advocacy for the community, to just chat through what it all means, what it all is. And yeah, I think there's a real opportunity. But I think people have to just take the opportunity that is presented to them. And this is a really free, accessible kind of option to access, you know, resources to enhance their professional development.
We're sort of coming towards close to the end of our panel, but what I wanted to do was just throw it out to those on the listening in from outside who aren't on the panel. I don't know what we call them, the observers, the audience. That's what we call them. The audience. Yeah. So those of you in the audience, love to hear from you now. Just what are any questions for the panel? Any things that you've heard today that seem interesting and you'd like to know a little bit more about? Feel free to put them in the chat. Kieran has told us that he met his wife online through Plenty of Fish. That's exciting. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more about that soon enough. Any other questions that anybody would like to share?
Someone on my Instagram.
And where are the questions? Is somebody giving you? What's Matt's Instagram?
I just saw one that came on through on the tab called Q&A, Pete. It's this new thing.
That's a good question, everybody. Any other questions? Oh, right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Around Kieran was just making the comment about meeting his wife before Grindr. Matt, what is your Instagram? What's your Instagram that you want? Would you like to build an audience? No, I take that as an.
It's got my surname in it, so look for it. It's got my surname in it. Oh my god, embarrassing. One thing that I just forgot something that was interesting. When I actually think this is far more important than I remember. I would not have taken the job that I took, which started this trajectory of my career, and I found out that the owner's son was gay. Yeah. And I was terrified of entering the industry as in professional sales. And when I found that out, I accepted the job. I needed something. I needed some support. So if I had some form of mentorship, I mean, yeah. So that just hit me just then. Like, wow, I would not have done that had I not known about that yet. So.
Leon's asked a good question. Thanks, Leon. First time caller, long time listener. Leon, you ask, what do you think makes a good mentor? We'll start with you, Nick. You spend a lot of time in the world of mentoring.
I think probably investment, like commitment, I guess, to the mentoring relationship, to meet regularly, to kind of chat through things, to answer questions, to alleviate the fears. I think, you know, that kind of word does sum it up. From my experience, so mentors play different roles depending on kind of what's happening for me and what I'm seeking out. So the example that I can give is when I was doing my Masters of Social Work, I did a research project and dissertation, and I actively sought out through OFA someone who was doing their PhD because that was a little bit above my Master's dissertation. And I asked them about research methodologies and kind of queer literature and incorporating all of that into it. And that was really invaluable because I didn't necessarily have that in my kind of, I guess, contacts at that point in time. It depends on the individual. You get out of it what you put into it as well. I think that's a really important thing. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's that commitment and investment into the relationship, whatever it is for.
And what about you, Mckeelie? What do you think? And you've had sounds like you've had an amazing mentor or series of mentors through your career. What has made those mentoring relationships great?
I think one of the biggest things is consistency. When you have someone that's always in your court, that's on your side, you know they have your back, you know that they can be like your troubleshoot, like, oh shit, I've done this, what do I do? So having that kind of person's really helpful. Also, when they have walked a similar path, like before you, someone that you can reference to, it makes it a little bit more personal. So allies are great, but when you have someone who's part of the community in that kind of way, it makes it a lot more personal and you feel a little bit more understood. You don't feel as isolated. So I think, yeah, when it becomes a little bit more personal, and consistency are probably the two biggest ones for me that would make a good mentor.
No, that's great. So just as we sort of start to think about wrapping up, I'd love to I have one more question that I was keen to get the panel's kind of point of view on. So we started this conversation today about some of your experiences of growing up in LGBTQI in regional areas, and some it's clearly each of you have your own story to tell, and there are millions more out there of trauma and prejudice and things. But I'd love to hear from you about what's the best thing about growing up LGBTQI plus in a regional area. What's the thing that you reflect on and go, I'm really lucky to have had that experience? Tell me, maybe starting with you, Matt.
I think when I first thought about this, I made some off-the-cuff comment like, the day that you pack your bags and leave. I have two things that actually I thought about this. So I think the first thing, knowing I have a lot of friends that are quite a bit younger than me who are growing up in the city, in the urban areas, and it's terrific. There's so much support. There's wonderful communities, but there's also a lot of pressure. And I think there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way, to be in certain areas, to associate. I mean, you can or cannot. You don't have to subscribe to these norms. You can avoid them, but there's a lot more of them. So I feel like I'm grateful for growing up. I mean, I'm really camp and flamboyant, and I love that about myself. And I grew up in the country, and all of that is actually just kind of me. It's all me. I'm not, I didn't go to the Emerson on a Sunday religiously, even though I didn't want to go, and I didn't wear the clothes that I didn't want to go to. I just felt that there was not so much pressure. So I'm thankful for that. It's a double-edged sword though, because there's isolation involved in that. And then the other thing that I think that I really respect about growing up in the country is that the people that I did meet, and the people that there were so few opportunities to meet allies, or it's actually meeting gay people and people that are queer, people that I identify really closely with. So few opportunities. So when you do meet someone, and when I did meet those very few people, it was just a hugely emotional experience being able to connect with them. I felt they were courageous because they came to me. I felt like I was courageous because I came to them. And some of those connections, which go back to like the early 90s, I still know where they're at. They're some of the longest connections that I have had, and a really, really deep and strangely deep relationship. Not on it. But yeah, so those relationships that were formed in that really isolating, scary time were really, really, really important and fundamental for my formation of this character, who I am today. So yeah, a big one.
Thanks, Matt. What about you, Mckeelie? What's the best thing about growing up in LGBTQI in regional areas?
Similar to Matt, you do tend to build those really personal connections with people who would be considered allies now. So you don't have all that kind of stuff locally. Like, I was never part of any LGBT plus groups until I was an adult. So all through primary school, high school, I never had any of that kind of support. And I think those friendships, even teachers that see the potential in you, really believe in you and push you. Also certain family members that just accept you how you are. I think you tend to build really close connections with these people. It might be a smaller group, but they're very strong bonds and they're generally lifelong. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's a really incredible experience about being rural and regional. Also the beautiful country, like why wouldn't you want to grow up with like the beach only just down the road and then a rainforest and then the desert? Like photography, going outdoors, hiking, like you can't do all that in a big city all the time. So I think it's a beautiful place to really find yourself, sit and reflect on things. Also listen to a lot of music and cry by yourself, but also, yeah, like I wouldn't
In
change
amongst the
anything.
sugarcane fields.
Yeah, exactly. You can munch on it as well.
I'm heading there. And then thanks, Mckeelie. And then finally, Nick, in 30 seconds.
I think it's just the opportunity to create tangible difference within attitudes and perceptions. Like my brother
Right.
and the story that I told earlier,
Yeah.
you know, I do what I do and I've made a career out of kind of being out and proud in a regional area, and I'm quite proud of that. But the shift in attitudes that have changed based on me being out and proud and simply just being there, you know, that's saying you can't be what you can't see. And I wish I had someone like me when I was at school and I was growing up and I was struggling, and now I get to be that person, and that fulfills me. And, you know, I think it's just really wonderful to have that opportunity to be that person that I wish I had when I was at school.
Well, it's a great way to, a really perfect place to end our conversation today. So if you're interested in becoming a mentor or a mentee or both, just jump over to the Out for Australia website. It's outforaustralia.org. I'm sure you can Google it as well for more information and to create an account. It's all completely free, as I said at the beginning. It's open to anyone over 18 here in Australia, and it's quick and easy to join. And if you're interested in rewarding volunteer opportunities with OFA, again, they're looking for volunteers to participate in holding, particularly if you're in regional areas. We're building a regional mentoring program together, and it would be great to hear more from you if you're interested in helping us run and set those up across regional Australia. There's a wide range of great opportunities to broaden your experiences, give back, connect with some great people, and have some fun along the way. Talking of great people, I just want to say thank you so much to our amazing panel today for being authentic, for being honest, and for being funny, and for sharing your experiences. I really, really appreciate it. So Nick, Matt, Mckeelie, thank you. Thanks to those who've joined. Have a good evening.
And thanks
to you, Pete. Very nicely
yeah.
done. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Pete. See ya.
See ya. Bye-bye.